Need to wait for it? We good to go? All right. I'd like to call to order the governing board meeting at 5 o'clock PM. Could we all stand for the flag salute, please? Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Like to let it be noted that all governing board members are present. Notification that this audience notification of audio taping, streaming, and recording for this open session. We'll go into the approval of agenda. It's recommended that the governing board approve the agenda for the January 27, 2025 governing board meeting.
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Shedd. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Fritos. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passed 5-0. Moving forward, governing board comments. We'll start with Mr. Jensen today.
Oh, thank you. I wish to thank those from our unions and our management staff for their very kind and considerate gifts to the board members. That was very, very kind of you. I wanted to specifically thank those who put together this wonderful event called the Superintendent's Cup. And not once, but twice, the Register published articles on separate days, January 19th and the 23rd, on our event there at the Buena Park High School. And I am super proud to have been out there and seen all the students participate in that. That was just a very, very wonderful event. So my thanks to all those who spent a lot of time, obviously, in putting that together and having a really good time out there. I was noticing there was a communication regarding a webinar on simplifying communication, and I just wanted to say that's a great idea. I know in my business, they use a lot of management speak and a lot of terms from the latest books that are used, and so it kind of creates sometimes difficulty in understanding what people are saying because they use different terms for things that are old. And I just wanted to say that I thought that was a great webinar piece in the Friday update, I believe it was. So thank you. And
Thank you. Ms. Estrada?
Echoing the sentiments of board member Jensen, it was so much fun to see all the students and parents and staff and faculty just really letting loose and having fun at the Superintendent's Cup. It was really a full house. You could really see all the energy, even with parents, kind of everyone was coming up with their chants with beautiful poster boards in support of their schools and their students. Even it was really amazing because it was so nerve-wracking that they even went into penalties at the end. So you could tell families were 100% really into it and very invigorated. And it was, thank you so much to everyone who put in all the time and effort to put that together. It was really enjoyable. And I know everyone left with a smile on their faces. Thank you.
Ms. Shedd?
Thank you. I want to reiterate what Trustee Jensen said about how appreciative we are of the recognition from all the unions, and I shouldn't say unions, all the groups that we have, and their thoughtful gifts are really appreciated. On the 16th, I was able to participate in the district spelling bee, and so that was fun watching the kids. It's amazing how well the kids are. I shouldn't say it's amazing because our kids are amazing, but they do an excellent job at the spelling bee. And there were so many people there to support them, and families and coaches and teachers and whatnot. So that was great to see everybody there and support. And of course, the Superintendent's Cup, oh my goodness, that was a wonderful day to participate in the Buena Park family. And so I went away just smiling from ear to ear all afternoon. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fritos?
Well, good evening, everyone. Just want to start off by saying in a few days, it'll be lunar year, so happy lunar year to those celebrating with family and friends. Also had an opportunity to attend the Superintendent's Cup. That was an amazing event in its own. And the neat part about it was the principal for the Buena Park High School. I was talking to him and he was surprised when I told him that the students had been practicing for a couple months. He thought it was just, put together and it happened in a couple days, but that's not how it happened. But that goes to show the work that every staff member put towards it, the teachers, the coaches, most importantly, the students. The sportsmanship that I saw out on the field was amazing, and that trickled down to also staff and everybody that was a participant of the event because it was well put together. According to the principal there, it was a well-oiled machine. So great job to everybody that facilitated and put it all together. Also had an opportunity to visit Whitaker and Pendleton. Got to see some classrooms, got to see the students, but more importantly, just to check in on the principal, see how they were doing. Just to see what's going on at the school. More importantly, while I was at Pendleton, they were working on Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. That assignment never gets old for me. Every time I see it and you talk to the students and see what they're thinking, like you always get a different perspective, but it's always refreshing. And it was just, the way they were articulating it to me was just refreshing. Love that assignment. Never gets old every time I see it. And over the weekend, I had the opportunity to be alongside Ms. Wong at the Boys and Girls Club at Knott's Berry Farm for the Youth of the Year. Got to see some of our students from Emory and Corey be recognized as Youth of the Year. Anytime our students are celebrated outside of our district by other partners, it's always beautiful to see, and it's always a great accomplishment because we do produce great students and great citizens here in our districts that translates out to the community. So a great job with that. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I'll have to jump on the same thing. I guess for shout outs to Whitaker. They had a great, I think, month when it came to the spelling bee. I heard they represented strong. Principal Williamson was over the moon with the success they had. So, I mean, even if you didn't know, you would know just by seeing her. As well as at the Superintendent's Cup. I know I think 5th grade won it all. So Whitaker had a great month, it seems like, as well as Emory. I think they took 2 of the grade levels for Superintendent. So shout out to those schools. Shout out to EdServe, because I know that you don't get a lot of love when it comes to reports. So I will be excited to hear about the dashboard results. So I'm looking forward to that representation. Sometimes you don't get the excitement, but yes, EdServe, thank you for the report coming up. I don't have much else to share except everyone please be healthy. The sickness is going around. I got hit with the bug and it's not good. It's nasty. So please everyone stay healthy. And Dr. Lee, Superintendent.
This is our second board meeting, so I don't have much with my superintendent's report, but I do want to make it 6-0. I would like to echo the sentiments regarding the Superintendent's Cup. It was a special day for me. You can't even make this up. It was my birthday. And so I don't know who the masterminds were behind the middle of the field, and singing, getting a lot of attention, but it made that day extra special. I couldn't contain my excitement. It's amazing what a good competition brings out from the crowd, but seeing the students with fancy footwork, and they all played so nicely together. There was camaraderie, there was teamwork, collaboration. It was evident. It was just the display of those core values that we talk about so often by words. Seeing it modeled in action was the heartwarming part of that event. Just a thank you to everyone who made that day happen. It's a one-day event that requires much behind the scenes. And so just a huge shout out to Director Dr. Sandra Song. We have our teacher in special assignment, Gil Kim. We have our wellness teacher, Catherine, and we also have our Zeri Huang, our Chief Academic Officer, who carried the torch last year. So I'm sure as you transitioned over to CAO, it's very near and dear to your heart. So I can't wait till February's board meeting because you never guess what the topic is that we're going to showcase. It's going to be the Superintendent's Cup. So can't wait to see kids in the room, and maybe we'll learn a few fancy soccer moves ourselves. That concludes my report.
All right, moving on to programs reports. We have a post-election analysis of the Measure M. Dr. Lee.
Yes, we have Joy Coomer here from Team Civics to give us a brief presentation.
Good evening, Board President, fellow board members, Superintendent and Cabinet. I'm Joy Coomer with Team Civics. I had been working with the district last year leading up to the bond measure before it was even placed on the ballot. And then, of course, once it was placed on the ballot, we worked with the Independent Campaign Committee who worked very hard on the passage of Measure M. So tonight I have a little bit of a look at the results, how those numbers break out across some different demographics. It's important to note there are a couple things that we can see with these numbers. We can always see who voted, right? I can look up anyone and I can tell what elections they voted in. We don't know how anyone actually cast their ballot. Sometimes we can make assumptions based on the results, but we never know how an individual voter actually votes in any particular election. So remember, as we're looking through the data, we're looking at demographics. It's helping us sort of take a big picture look at it, but we don't actually know how individuals voted, just the overall vote in completion. So first, we take a look at our top line results. Measure M received 67.54% yes, 32.46 people voted no. That brought us to that 15,162 votes. This means Measure M passed by 5,318 votes. Measure M required 55% to pass. That is a supermajority measure, unlike candidates who oftentimes need 50% plus one. So we did very well. We were well above the 55% needed for passage. This is a look at actual results versus the polling that was done for the district before the board decided to vote to place the measure on the ballot. I've broken that down amongst the 3 ballot tests that the board heard. So I'll speak to each one of these. In September of 2023, there was polling that was completed. We tested some different messages. We also tested the actual ballot question. The first ballot test was voters, potential voters, hearing the ballot question, all 75 words ending in a question mark, prior to hearing any information at all about the bond. The interim ballot test was after they had an opportunity to hear more about the cost and a little bit more about the types of projects and different things that you would complete with the bond. Then the final ballot test was after there were some negative comments that were placed, things that typical people might hear or say taxes are too high. We don't need this bond. And so if you look across this on that initial ballot test, we had 67% say they would vote yes, 11.5% undecided, and 21% no. Consistently throughout, we always saw a floor of about 20% no voters. That's pretty consistent with what I see across the state. Even when you look at all the bond measures that passed in November, it's rare to see anyone above 80%. In fact, I think the highest passage rate was about 80%. So across California, there is typically about 20% of voters who will say no to any bond measure. At the interim ballot test, after people heard a little bit more about the types of projects that would be completed, we did see that yes go up to 74. And then after the final ballot test, the number dropped to 65%. Obviously, we received 67%. This means that We were very close to that first ballot test that we saw and always within that margin of error. So your polling really was a good reflection of your voters here in the school district. We did find, though, that staying on top of our messaging and the door-to-door outreach that was completed by the volunteers really helped stay ahead of any misinformation that might have gotten out into the community. And I think that solidified the support that we saw at the end of the election. Comparing turnout across the county and then across the state too. I just wanted to also mention that in November, there were 267 bond measures that were on the ballot. 204 of them passed, 62 of them failed. That was a passage rate of 77%. In California, typically we have seen about bond passage rates in presidential elections being between 78 and 80%. So still a little bit lower. The other phenomena that we saw here in California, though, as well at the same time, was slightly fewer people turned out to vote in this election. I bring this up because when we look at your ballot drop-off, and I'll explain that in just a moment, we see that 16% of your eligible voters skipped voting down the ballot on Measure M. So we saw this a lot across the state as well. Not only were fewer people turning out to vote, but we also saw this ballot drop off being much higher than we've typically seen in the past. So what I mean by that is usually people will vote in the presidential election, even when they don't vote in any other election. And just to kind of put a pin on it, the 2016 election turnout in California was 75%. In 2020, it was almost 81%. This past November turnout in California was 71.45%. You can see Orange County slightly above that at 76%. So Orange County did perform higher than the statewide average. But when we come to your very local district, we see you had 25,258 eligible voters, 16,491 cast a ballot. That means they started at the top of the ticket and somewhere on their ballot, they voted for something. It could be that they only voted for one thing. Oftentimes, there are some voters who just vote president and then they never go any further. We find that as you get further and further down the ballot, people tend to drop off, right? They get into things like judges and water board and all these other boards that they maybe don't know who the people are or haven't had an opportunity to research. And so they just tend not to make it all the way down. 16% is pretty significant. We usually say a norm is about 8% who don't make it down the ballot. So, you know, just a lot of voters who voted the top of the ticket here and then just never made it down the ballot. So an interesting thing, seeing that number that high. When we look across party, I also think that this is always really important. And this goes back to what I said at the very beginning. We can't tell how individual voters voted, but we know because you received 67% of the vote, you had to have bipartisan support. More than just Democrats had to vote yes on your Measure M in order to be successful. So you can see the turnout amongst the different parties. We see that Republicans, although they make up fewer of the eligible voters, the turnout was actually much higher. Democrats still made up 43.48% of the ballots, but Republicans turned out in higher numbers and voted. No party preference could be anyone from independent voters to Peace and Freedom to Green Party. So it all just gets kind of lumped together. The majority of those are typically, though, independent voters. So again, in order to receive, you were among the top third of all bonds that passed with your passage rate. So if we look at all those 200 plus bonds that passed, you're in the top third. of those. We know that you had to have support from each of these buckets in order to have that much, to reach that 67%. And if there are any questions, please feel free to interrupt me or I can answer questions at the end, but please don't hesitate to ask a question about a slide. Again, here we look at turnout by age. This was another thing in our historically low turnout across California is we saw fewer younger voters participating in the election statewide. So although our registration and turnout, or excuse me, the registration was higher among this group, a lot of those younger voters just didn't turn out and vote. And we see that here. As you look down the columns, you can see we have these different bands, 18 to 24, 25 to 34, and all the way down. This is, again, very consistent across the state, but always a stark reminder for everyone. Not only do your voters over the age of 55 turn out at the highest numbers, you can see both those groups, 72% turnout, 76% turnout, but they also are a large percentage of your ballots overall, nearing 50% voters over the age of 55. I mention this to my school districts when I come give this presentation and I see numbers like this, because oftentimes school districts think when we're communicating, we have to communicate with our families, and they forget that their community and their voters is made up of these voters who are over the age of 55. And they need to hear from you too, especially as you're looking at passing or talking about different work that is accomplished because of your bond measure. So the more that you can communicate with that group, the more they'll understand what is going on with your schools. Just taking a look at our communication methods with the community. We did do some texting, some mailing different pieces of information to the community about why to vote yes on Measure M, and then also walking. One of the things that we saw is you can see the mail turnout. We contacted about 21,815 voters. That could be voters residing in the same household, right? That number, even though it's bigger than like how many voted in the election, we're counting voters who reside in one household there. They turned out at 65.5%. So if we mailed someone, their turnout was at 65%. Texting was actually a little bit less. We tend to text on a very broad scale so that we can engage more people. But I think what we see here, which is really important to highlight, is that walking, we had an incredible door-to-door program. And I just want to say, thank you to all the hardworking volunteers who were able to come together and make that happen. I really do believe in a small neighborhood community like Buena Park School District, that door-to-door contact is so important. And you can see that those voters that had some touch from a volunteer turned out at over 71%. So a very important part of your campaign process. Oh, wrong way. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. Here we go. So a few metrics, things that were completed during our campaign. We communicated early and often. We started with the district, communicating, sending mail out into the community. We also attempted to have a couple open houses where we were able to share some information. The campaign, though, sent 3 persuasion mail pieces and 1 get out the vote mailer on top of that. They knocked on over 4,400 doors. And again, I truly believe that was part of the success. There were nearly 88,000 text messages that were sent in 3 different waves. So over time, we sent different text messages. 250 lawn signs were put up, and COG signs, those signs that were on the streets, up high. You may have remembered seeing those, also helped increase the campaign's visibility. So overall, some really solid campaign metrics by our team. So in conclusion, it was a really strong campaign. Had a very, the community was very supportive of Measure M, and I know that it will have a great impact on the school district and the future generations of families. So thank you again for your trust as we put together this campaign and move forward. And again, happy to answer any questions you might have.
I don't have a question, just a comment. It's nice to see who was supporting our bond measure, because we had no idea.
Yes.
So this is very informative. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I do just have a comment. It was early on where we realized the approach we need to take with not just a small school district, but a family field district. So in other words, we had a high response rate, and I believe you shared that in the middle of our campaign, of those who actually opened the door. This era, we typically have a ring and then we see who's out there and decline to open. It took above and beyond for cabinet and for management, for our teachers union, as well as those who supported all around the district, our support staff. It took all of us to go above and beyond, because what that meant was it was early morning meetings. It was rallies, it was donation of gift cards to kind of get us out and excited, but it was attending all of the school site events, such as all the trunk or treats. It was literally door to door. I can't thank enough for having a cabinet who saw not only the importance of that, but willing to work the boots to the ground and extra overtime to make sure that we had those conversations. Our principals came front and center. They had our backs with every event. And Joy, I want to applaud you. At one point, you were dealing with a very nervous superintendent. And it was your willingness to take my call at any time. I'm not kidding. It was Saturday mornings. I recall we even allocated a special time just for us before the day started on Tuesday morning. We calendared them, and it was to ease some of the anxiety around that comes with the campaign, knowing how much was riding on the funding to unlock some of the things that our district desperately needs right now. So just thank you to you and your above and beyond approach. You too have that personal touch core value that mirrored our core values here. And it was a win-win for all of us. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So having not been on the board when this was authorized and just recently elected, who is Team Civics?
So that is my firm. I am one of the owners of Team Civics.
Yeah.
We are a communications firm that works all over the state of California. We only work on ballot measures, and I would say 80% of our work is working with school districts on bonds and parcel taxes. So oftentimes I start working with the district long before they put a measure on the ballot, helping them think about their needs and how to communicate those needs. And then working on the resolution to prepare that for a board vote. I did come and present a couple different times to the board, just talking through the timeline and the process. And then when we finished up and the board voted to place the measure on the ballot, I was no longer under contract with the district, but the independent campaign committee did hire us to help run the campaign. So oftentimes we also run the campaign side, and that's developing the strategy for each community, trying to be there for our superintendents and everyone who is involved in the campaign committee, designing and creating materials that are used to do that communication and outreach, and then helping with like all the door-to-door contact, all of the text messages, each piece along the way. And we even designed the logo with the help of the committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a shout out to like even Mike Magbu and the team, because when you see from our previous bond in action, dollars in action, like a new pack, a new gym, I think people recognize that dollars are being used like well for our schools. And I think it creates, I mean, a lot of people I think had trauma from the last bond election cycle where we were smart and we were like making sure we don't follow the trend and we didn't get that trauma, but a lot of people did, I know. So it was really great that we got a good turnout and good testament to our community to believing in our school. So that's really nice. So thank you. Thank you for your work and helping us pass this bond. That was very essential. So anybody else?
I just want to say thank you to all the volunteers and everybody that was part of the campaign. Team Civics, great job. I think the explanation as far as looking at the implications from voters on either side of the aisle paints a good, picture as to what it looked like while you guys were out on the campaign and canvassing and speaking to, knocking on doors and speaking to the community, the residents, right? So also want to thank the, Bonaparte community for, polling for such measure because it is going to play a big role in facilitating better facilities for our entire school district. And thank you for that. So well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Moving on to our next report, California School Dashboard, Buena Park School District Summary.
We have Director LaRonda Ortega, Director of Curriculum and Instruction here with us. And we also have Natalie Benda. I want to give her a shout out, Coordinator of Data and Accountability.
Alright. So good evening, Board President Chong, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Dr. Lee, Executive Cabinet and guests. I'm so happy that you're excited, Board President, about our presentation tonight. I'm very excited as well. Today, we will delve into our recently released 2024 California School Dashboard. This tool provides insight into our schools and district-wide performance, allowing us to make data-driven decisions that benefit our students. By examining both state and local measures, we can identify areas of strength, target areas for improvement, and ultimately enhance student achievement. So let's explore how this data informs our strategies and drive positive change for teaching and learning. So how is a performance level determined? So before we can look at our district data, let's orient ourselves to information to help us understand how performance levels are determined. Let's understand how the 5x5 table works. The dashboard addresses school performance based on both current year results and year-over-year improvement. Looking at the 5x5 color grid shown on the left illustrates this. The intersection of a school's current performance level along the vertical axis and its prior year to current year improvement along the horizontal axis determines the dashboard color. Red indicates the lowest performance, while blue signifies the highest. That color or indicator appears on the dashboard as you can see in image 3. So what is on the indicator card? What will the dashboard tell us is what the indicator card answers. First, we can toggle between our data and state data. Below that is the color indicator for this year's performance level. Third shows the average distance from standard for our district. Fourth is the distance from standard comparison from the prior year. And finally, we see how our student groups perform. So let's take a look at our academic indicators. So for our district, the academic indicators are based on the spring 2024 CASP and LPAC assessments. So California Assessment for Student Performance in Progress is our CASP, and our LPAC is our English Language Proficiency Assessment. Starting on the left are the Smarter Balanced English Language Arts and Math results that students in grades 3 through 8 take. For English Language Arts, we can see that overall our students maintained status as compared to prior year. However, we did see a shift in student groups with 3 student groups moving into red for a total of 5 student groups this year versus only 2 last year. Students within the student group of African American, foster youth, and long-term English learners joined our homeless and students with disabilities in the red category as well. Next is math. This is our second year of seeing improvement moving towards standard. However, the increase of 4.4 points was not enough to move us into the next color level. While we are growing overall, we saw 4 student groups move into a red as compared to 0 student groups last year. The student groups are foster youth, homeless, long-term English learners, and students with disabilities respectively. On the right, you can see the indicator card on the dashboard, which is science based on the California Science Assessment. This indicator will not be used for accountability purpose on the 2024 dashboard and will be displayed only for informational purposes. Hence why there's no performance colors indicated on the indicator card. The California Science Test Assessment is given to students in grades 5 and 8. And here, current information available on the California School Dashboard Science Indicator on the CDE website, noting that the science performance indicator is informational. The State Board of Education, it's important to note that the State Board of Education is considering the following next steps as they review the indicator as an accountability metric. So the next step for the science indicator is to create a performance level that has yet to be done by the State Board of Education. This includes identifying status cut points, change cut points, and approval of the science indicator color scheme for the 5x5 grid. A second next step before we get to having science indicator as an accountability piece is also to ensure that the State Board of Education has state and federal accountability measures in place for the science indicator. This would be choosing the science indicator to align to our differentiated assistant criteria, as well as a federal alignment to Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA eligibility. So our accountability, our academic indicators are also broken down into our equity reports. This is what gives us information regarding student groups. We can delve deeper into that data on this slide. You can see which student groups are at each indicator color. On the left is ELA, or English Language Arts. Spring 2024 results show that 3 student groups performing in the red color band. They are African American student group, foster youth, as well as long-term English learners. Turning to math on the right, while students are growing overall, 4 student groups are performing in the red color band as well, as compared to 0 last year. Those student groups are foster youth, homeless, long-term English learners, and students with disabilities. So the next indicator would be our English learner progress. And this focuses on our English learners' performance utilizing the English Language Proficiency Assessment Indicator, or what we call the ELPI. And this is for in association with the LPAC. The LPAC is given to EL students in grades K through 8 each spring. The ELPI measures how well schools and districts are helping English learners progress towards English language proficiency using year-to-year growth on the LPAC assessment. For EL students taking the summative LPAC, progress is advancing at least 1 LP level. For students taking the summative alternate LPAC, progress is students advancing at least 1 level on the assessment, or a scale score change of at least 10 points, plus 10 points. Looking at the indicator card on the left, 46.8 of our English learners are making progress towards English proficiency. This is a decline of 3.6% from the prior year, which changed the color indicator from green to orange. This decrease is likely attributed to the reclassification of approximately 174 students in the 23-24 school year, a 3% increase from the prior year, which you see on the right. Due to the reclassification increase, the number of students taking the spring 24 LPAC dropped from 938 in 2023 to 816 in 2024. And we are very proud of our reclassification rate increasing by 3%. The middle graphic is the new dashboard indicator for long-term English learners. So it's important to note that this indicator is brand new to the dashboard and hasn't been there before. Of the 220 long-term English learners, 63.8% are making progress towards English proficiency, showing an increase of 5.9% from the prior year, from the previous year. While this is the first year that the indicator is on the dashboard, previous year LTEL data was captured yet not published on the dashboard. Previous year data compared to the 2024 data has been used to determine this level of progress. And so as a reminder, the summative LPAC, summative alternate LPAC data are the measures used to determine progress for these student groups. So English learner progress, let's break this down a little further. And let's look at the English Learner Progress Indicator, or the ELPI. This slide breaks down EL progress by level. It shows the percentage of current EL students who progressed at least one ELPI level, maintained ELPI level 4, maintained lower ELPI levels, for example, level 1, or level 2 lower, L, which is lower, or 2H, which is too high level, or decreased at least one LP level. On the left, the graph represents growth or decline for the past 3 years. So since 2022, overall EL students are making progress. Looking at the purple band, the number of students who progressed at least one level has increased by 4.4%. Also indicative of maintaining or progressing is the decline in the number of students who decreased at least one LP level. So since 2022, the percent of students who decreased an LP level dropped 5.4%. So some students who are enrolled in our moderate to severe special education program qualify to take the summative alternate LPAC assessment. In 2024, we had 12 students who took this assessment. If you look at the chart on the right, you will see that the summative alternate progress indicator has 3 score levels, with purple representing students who maintained the highest level of 3. Of the 12 students who took the summative alternate LPAC, 62.5% of the students maintained a summative level of 3, while 37.5% did not make progress. And so moving on to chronic absentee and suspension. Improvement for these indicators are demonstrated by a decline in percentage. It's important to note that. So let's turn our attention to chronic absenteeism on the left. This indicator saw improvement from prior year. On the left, overall chronic absenteeism improved by 1 color level in 2024 by reducing the number of students who are chronically absent by 5.9%. Next is the suspension indicator, which also saw improvement from the prior year. While the decline rate was 0.08, it was significant enough to move us 2 levels from orange to green. Okay. So turning our attention to student groups. On the left, the chronic absenteeism equity report shows positive movement within the student groups. Since 2023, 7 of 13 student groups moved up one or more color level. This includes African American student group, 2 or more races, Asian student group, English learner, Hispanic, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and Filipino student groups. For suspension in 2023, we did not have student groups in green, only 1 in blue and 10 groups in red, orange, and yellow. This year, we have 6 student groups in green, showing an improvement in reducing suspensions. This concludes our dashboard summary. Are there any questions?
Thank you for that. Mr.
I do have
Jensen, go
a
ahead.
question. Could you explain a little bit more on the actual scale, the vertical scale? It's, very high, medium, low. I'm just struggling to understand what that means versus,
Which slide?
so the very first
Slide-
slide.
Slide
Okay,
2.
the
Yeah.
five.
How performance level is determined. Yeah, I'm just struggling. I don't quite understand how you determine that vertical column of very high to very low.
Okay, so the vertical column is our current year data level, and it goes from very low to very high level, and that is based on scale scores provided by student performance. And then along the
Oh,
horizontal axis is the difference between the current year and the prior year. And then-
Okay, yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
It finally clicked. Appreciate that.
No problem.
I'll piggyback off that though. Like last year, I mean, ELA and math, we're kind of transitioning with testing coming back, and we always like to start with that numbers are important for data. However, there's much more to that
Mhm.
than just numbers, but it's really promising to see even I think our starting scale score as a better position than we did before.
Mhm.
Across the state, I know math is always challenging, but we're in a better place with math, which is always harder than ELA, I feel like. Increasing 4.4 points is huge. Again, the bands are kind of just leading the same. Sometimes you see like yellows and red and orange, you're like, oh, we don't like, but I think the story is more, I think I like this dashboard. I love it because it's about growing. And I think we show really good growth from the year. And that's testament to our teachers, our admins who made a lot of efforts. I think is noticed. Just want to throw that out there. And even our EL students, like progress may not be as strong in the initial, but like our L tells really good data. So like, it's really like a good litmus to see that we're like an active heartbeat. And I feel like our district does a good job of that. So thank you for everyone that does that. I know there's a lot of things. Just a quick question on I'm gonna just say, for example, ELA. So we have more student groups fall into red this time than before. Could you maybe give us a little bit of what a plan might look like to help address that this coming year?
Absolutely. So we have invested a lot of time in preparing through our CARE initiative. So we've focused heavily this year on shoring up foundational literacy in our elementary grades. Each school site at the elementary level has identified consistent curriculum to address the foundational literacy needs. In addition to that, for grades 3 through 5 in elementary, we have an intensive intervention program that also focuses on foundational literacy. Through our instructional coaches, we are also focusing on how we can support our staff, our teaching staff, to provide the best possible Tier 1 instruction and Tier 2 intervention support through instructional coaching. So we have a well-designed plan to address needs in literacy.
Thank you for that.
On mine, just really quick, when you're mentioning LP, were you referring to language proficiency?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to just clarify that because maybe somebody hearing it may not understand what that is. So I just wanted to clarify that was language proficiency that you were communicating to us about.
Yes, absolutely. LP is definitely all about language proficiency.
Great, thank you.
I can just add on in terms of their roadmap as for our students. But in addition to that, we're looking at specific subgroups, and particularly our homeless students as well as our foster youth students, and we do see a need with their academic achievements. So we're doing a root cause analysis on that to see how we can better support our specific subgroups.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll be moving on to the hearing session. The audience members may request to address the board on an item on or off the agenda per board bylaw 9323. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the governing board on each agenda or non-agenda item. Board limits the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. The total time allowed for public comments shall be 30 minutes. Members wishing to address the board during the hearing session on the agenda should fill out a request to address the governing board form and turn it in to the executive assistant prior to the board holding the hearing session. We have no public comments. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the approval of minutes, approval of the January 13, 2025 regular meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Frutos. Thank you, Mrs. Estrada. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. We'll be moving on to the action discussion calendar, a little bit of different change here. So we get to kind of discuss a little bit through some of these items. But before that, the first item though, I think Dr. Lee might have something. Approval of the 25-26 Buena Park School District Budget Development Calendar and Preliminary Budget Assumptions. Dr. Lee.
Thank you. We have here today with us our Chief Financial Officer, Sandy Poteet, and she has a budget update for you tonight.
Like to discuss our budget development process for the 25-26 budget. We begin with looking at the budget development components. We have external components and internal components that influence our budget development. Externally, we have the governor's state budget proposal. We look at the federal budget, we look at COLA, what our statutory benefit rates are, what the retirement contribution rates are. Internally, the things that we have more information or more, wouldn't say control, but that are our data is our enrollment projections, our student attendance rates, and our staffing ratios. We'll start with where the governor's budget proposal was. The governor has proposed, he released his budget proposal for 25-26 in early January. And it was a balanced budget for the state. He did make reference to the fact that we have some volatile state revenues right now. The state of California relies on our capital gains from our wealthiest Californians. So those folks make up the largest portion of the revenue that the state receives for the state budget. The other piece that's impacting our revenue that we're unsure of at the state level is the new federal administration's policies and how that's going to play out on our economy in the state of California. So those are unknowns that the governor is trying to mitigate and look at when he's developed this budget. The budget did include a reserve of $16.9 billion in preparation and in concern of the volatility of the budget. And he has fully funded the COLA, which is currently estimated at 2.43%. And the COLA is, it's not a state rate that's determined by the state, it's a federal measure. And the final components of that will come out in late March, early April, and then the actual COLA rate will be finalized in April. At this time, the governor has fully funded it in the budget, and that's a good thing for us. Specifically in the state budget, the piece that we, as a school district, are most concerned with is the Proposition 98 or the education budget. Okay, so the Prop 98 budget, it's a 3-year look at the budget, believe it or not. So when the state is looking at Proposition 98, it is always looking at the prior year, which would be 23-24.
And it reconciles that. It looks at the current year, which is 24-25. It does a recheck of that. And then the 25-26 is what's anticipated, and that's the third group. So we have all 3 years that are being looked at in the Prop 98 budget for the state. There are concerns that in the current year for 24-25, the governor has calculated they've calculated the Proposition 98 budget, but they have not appropriated all of the budget for Proposition 98, which is unusual. We'll see we're waiting to see what happens. It may revise to see if he fully funds that or fully appropriates that. He's required, or I should say the state is required to fully appropriate that. There's a slight concern about why that isn't happening yet, but at this point in the year, we still have a wait and see to see what happens with the 24-25 budget for the current year. In 25-26, the state is expected to be in what's called Test 1. So Proposition 98 has 3 tests. Test 1 means that we're receiving 40% of the state general fund going directly to education. Go on to the next slide. New things that were in the state budget for a proposal for next year is a student support and discretionary block grant. This is a one-time Prop 98 discretionary block grant of 1.8 billion. It is too early to include this in our budget development for next year. There's no allocation method on how the state's going to send it out. There's no amount per student or anything of that nature. What we've been told is it's initially proposed uses are to address rising cost, which is a wide open category. Professional development for teachers on ELA and ELD framework, literacy roadmap, math framework, and for teacher recruitment and retention strategies. But this again is considered, it is one-time money. So it's not ongoing dollars that we can count on in the long term. And again, we're at this point, it's simply a proposal and we're not including it in our budget development at this time. The next slide. Another new proposal. Well, this isn't a new proposal. This is Learning Recovery Block Grant came about in 22-23. And once it was initiated, then it received a haircut. Let's call it a haircut. And governor they didn't fund it all. And there was an intention to bring it back and to fund what they took, what was shaved off. This is a one-time proposal of 378 million, which is 1/3 of what was promised to come back. And it was promised to come back over 3 years. So it appears at the moment that this money might come back. The downside is this Learning Recovery Grant at this time doesn't have an extension on spending. So we're going to get this new money or the allocation that they shortened back in 22-23. We're going to get it back, but we're not going to have any extension of time to spend it. So we're all still waiting to learn. It's again too early to include in our budget at this time. Next slide. Universal Transitional Kindergarten. This is not new. We've been in implementation mode for several years. It is what's considered fully implemented in 25-26 school year. So students of age 4 by September 1st are eligible for TK. Class size maximum is of 24. Beginning this year, there's a new component of a lowered student to adult ratio of 10-1. So currently it's been 12-1 up until and through this current year. Beginning in next year, the student to adult ratio will drop to 10-1. There is a proposal for 1.5 billion to support that lower ratio. However, too early to include in our budget. We'll look at that and calculate what that is, but at this time it'll be too early to include it. And we say too early to include because in the governor's in the process of the state budget, January, the governor makes a proposal. Now all of the committees at the state are all giving their opinions. They're investigating, there'll be hearings. And then in May, we'll receive what's called the May revision. The governor comes back out and presents another budget version. And that comes out about the 10th of May or so. At that point, we'll get that data. That'll help us see if there's anything that sort of stuck through the process. We'll have a better picture of where the state revenues are.
And then we'll be developing our budget after that. So right now, this is the first flush of what the governor's proposing for 25-26. So those are the external pieces that drive what we know about for our budget. We can go to the next slide. These are the pieces then, what we look at internally is our enrollment projections, which will drive our revenue for both the LCFF or local control funding formula, our other state revenue and federal revenues. And then it also drives our expenditure assumptions for the next year. So we'll go through those components. If we look at the next slide, this is our enrollment projections. So the green bars are what we're projecting. We are continuing to decline. This model is based on what's called the cohort method, meaning we take every first grader and assume they're here for second grade. We take every current second grader and assume they're here for third grade. So we assume every student stays from year to year between the years. But because we have more eighth graders leaving than we have estimated TK and kindergarten students coming in, we're still declining enrollment. So this isn't based on looking at who's leaving other than those that are aging out and then lower birth rates for coming in. So we have a lower student population coming in. There are low birth rates in the state of California. It's a statewide issue. It's not just a local issue. Just as a reminder, we're projecting to be at 3,611 students for next year, 25-26, which is again, lower than the current year by about 74 students. These numbers do not include our pre-K, our state preschool program. So we have still our state preschool, but they are not in this enrollment projection. They're funded and through a whole separate process. This is simply those students that we generate what's called average daily attendance on. And so this is the population that generates our general fund revenue. We can go to the next slide. We take that enrollment data and then we determine the ADA or the average daily attendance because we only get funded for when a student attends school. An absence, whether it's excused or unexcused, is not funded by the state. So we have to then take that enrollment and estimate how many students actually come on a daily basis. So this is our historical ADA ratios. You'll see a couple of anomalies. One, you'll notice in 2020, 2021, our ratio is higher than our actual enrollment data by 102.5%. That's because in 2020, 2021, those were the COVID years, we were not collecting ADA. The state said enrollment is fluctuating way too much. Attendance is variances, the health impact. We are, not wanting students to come when they're sick. So the state allowed and gave you permission. You used your attendance for 1920 to count for 2021. So you received a hold harmless. You got to carry that attendance from the prior year forward. You did not collect attendance and report it to the state. They didn't even collect your ADA unless you were growing. So that's why we have an anomaly where we have 2 years that have the exact same ADA and why our ADA is greater than our actual enrollment in 2020-21. We look here at the bottom where we've projected out what our average ratio or our ratio is. And you'll notice that in 25-26, we're estimating it at 94%. In 26-27, it looks like it dips a little to 93.8% and then goes back up to 94%. We actually do our ratios by grade span because our student population comes to school differently at the primary TK through 3 levels versus 4th through 6th grade students and 7th and 8th grade. And we're funded differently at those different ratios or grade spans. So we want to look at that attendance specifically for that student population and apply different ratios for each of those. So this ratio that's listed here is the overall ratio for the district, but we have some that are we have one group that might be down at 90 and somebody else is at 95. It just fluctuates by grade span. This is the overall district average for the ratio for the years. So we take this average daily attendance data, and that's what then goes into our funding formula. When we look at next year's budget, there are 4 programs that will be receiving COLA. Currently, the estimated COLA is 2.43. The LCFF or local control funding formula will be receiving the COLA. Our special ed programs receive the COLA, the child nutrition program receives COLA, and our mandate block grant receives COLA. The ELOT program does not receive a COLA, and the ACES or After School Education and Safety Program does not receive a COLA. Those are fixed contract rates amounts, and we do not get additional dollars for the COLA on those programs. When we look at other revenue sources in the district, our lottery revenue is based on a per ADA amount. It's projected at $191 per student for the unrestricted ADA, and the restricted lottery revenue is anticipated to be $82 per ADA. Mandate block grant is estimated to be $39.14 per ADA. And for our federal programs, we're using the current funding levels as of now. We have no additional data at this time, so we will be using what we're receiving in 24-25 and estimate that that will roll forward into 25-26. Remember, this is what we know as of now. As we're building the budget, if we get information that changes that we can include it in our budget adoption, we will. We look at the next slide. So the local control funding formula generates the largest portion of our budget. This is a breakdown of how this is funded. As you can see across the top, we receive funding based on those grade spans of TK through 3, 4 through 6, and 7, 8. We get an amount of a base grant per ADA, then the COLA is applied, and that gives us the new rate for 25-26. We receive what's called the grade span adjustment that's listed there as GSA. That is for our primary grades, so we receive additional dollars per student for that. That gives us as our adjusted base grant for each of the grade spans. Then we have what's called the supplemental grant per ADA. We receive, because we have what's an unduplicated pupil percentage, our unduplicated pupil count is for every student that counts for, we get an additional 20% of the base grant for each student that qualifies as an unduplicated student. Then if you, that's considered your supplemental grant. If your UPP percentage is greater than 55%, you get a concentration grant because you have a concentration of a population that qualifies for a UPP that is designated as your UPP percentage. You get the difference between your rate and 55%, that amount of percentage that's above that receives another 65% of your original allocation per student. And that's your concentration grant because you have a concentration. So we will, for us, we'll show on the next slide, we have what our estimated UPP is. It'll generate about, it's about 28% of our students trigger that we get this additional 65% concentration grant. We refer to it as S&C, supplemental and concentration. And so a lot of numbers to get to where that is and a lot of components, but we call it S&C. It's the component of the budget that's of the increase and improved services for the students that have generated the funding. In addition to that, there is a TK add-on that is shown here as $6,404. That is including the governor's proposed funding for the 10-to-1 attendance rate, student to teacher adult ratio. If that does not come through, the regular rate would be only $3,152. And that is based only on your TK ADA. You get that additional amount for each TK attendance day. We can go on to the next slide. So our assumptions we use when we build our local control funding formula, when we use what we call the calculator for this, we'll use, as I've said, the COLA of 2.43%. We have our projected enrollment of 3,611 students. Our ADA estimate is 94%. We have an unduplicated pupil percentage of 83.54%. And our funded ADA formula is 3 prior year average. So because you get your funding for the year based on whether whichever is higher, the current year, the prior year, or the 3 prior year average. And so that is the funding rate that we'll anticipate using for next year. So after we've built our revenues, then the other component is we look at our expenditures, our personnel. We have negotiated staffing ratios, which determine our teacher staffing projections. We have transitional kindergarten at 20-1 per, plus at 20-1 for teaching staff plus an aide. That is per state regulation. Kindergarten target of 24-1. We have a target for grades 1 through 3 of 26-1. Grades 4 through 5 have a target of 30-1, and grades 6 through 8 have a target of 30-1. Our personnel cost will also include all step and columns for salary schedules. So we anticipate for those employees that are moving either across the steps or down the column with salary changes, that is built into the budget for those employees. We'll get the next slide. The other component of our budget is benefits for those employees. So we have here the chart of what the rates are. We have our CalSTRS rate for our employees who are credentialed and are members of the CalSTRS retirement system. The rate is 19.10%. We don't anticipate that changing. For CalPERS, the estimate for 25-26, that's the retirement system for our non-credentialed employees, is estimated to be 27.4%. That rate is set by the CalPERS board and will come in April. Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, and workers' comp are all standard rates that are not anticipated to change, and they're listed here for you. Our health insurances, we are using an estimate of an increase of 7% as far as budgeting goes. We will not know what this is until for current year, we'll know in typically early May. We'll get the increase for the current year, but we have an estimate in our multi-year projection of 7% for each year. Our CSE and management staff have a hard cap for their benefits, so there's no increase built into the budget for those groups. So when we look at our next steps, as I said earlier, the governor's proposal has been released. That's what we are using as our preliminary document to work with. We will know more when the May revision comes out. For the district internally, we will begin finalizing staffing. We'll be working on site and department allocations will be determined, and the budgets will be developed accordingly with those departments and sites. We'll update our planning factors based on the May revision. And then in June, we provide the budget for public inspection on the 5th. The hearing will be on the 9th of June for our budget and our LCAP, and then anticipated adoption being on June 23rd. And are there any questions? I know that's a lot of information.
I have a question. So, tragic with the fires that happened and like a couple of years ago, we were in a similar situation. Then the following year, we got hit hard with the cliff because of the whole October delay on when you do your tax returns and all that stuff. And then that following year, we had a harder budget. So this one's more massive, I think, than what happened that time. And with this proposal, do you see anything that might lead to either them holding monies in case of what they need to do, as well as all the loss of property value that leads to property tax that would affect our income the following year?
So what the pieces we do know is LA County generates about 20% of the tax revenue for the state. LA County has the IRS and the state of California have postponed the tax collections for those groups until October. However, the state budget, when they settled the state budget agreement a year ago, there is language that if the tax revenues, if less than 50% of the tax revenues are collected, then they will not certify Prop 98. So Proposition 98 won't be certified if 50% of the taxes are not collected. Right now, it's only at 20%. So that means they're going to have to certify Proposition 98 and move forward with the budgeting with the way it is. Now, the state will have to make those decisions as we get closer. So depending on what the rest of the state turns in for property taxes in April, that will help make the determination. The other factor to be concerned with is, are there any other natural disasters that could impact between now and that date that could trigger additional tax delays that could change that and raise that 20% that we anticipate won't be coming in by April 15th.
So like some of this it's like excess money or extra money they
Well,
had
rem-
that they're putting into the
so-
proposal.
The way the Proposition 98 part of the budget works is we get the education budget gets 40% of the state budget. So then they have to calculate and provide us 40% of the state budget. They can choose to suspend Proposition 98 and provide a different amount. But unless they do that through action at the state level, then they have to provide us that funding. That's why some of these one-time funds, that's typically what happens is they put some one-time funds into these proposals. That's one, we don't know what the amounts are, but two, those are the types of things that then they could ease back on because that's not your ongoing day-to-day funding. And so if for some reason they need to provide less to us and the calculation doesn't come out as high, those one-time funds would be their first go-tos to reduce.
Any questions? No? Okay, thank you very much for that report. So moving on, we have approval of resolution 24-13 National School Counseling Week. I'm sorry, I forgot to approve that.
Yeah.
We went too fast. Any discussion? I guess we have nothing added. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Frutos, second by Mrs. Estrada. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Now, the approval of the resolution for 24-23 National School Counseling Week. Any discussion on that?
Just certainly want to thank the counselors for the excellent job they do for our students and for our school district. It's a absolutely critical position and well deserved to call them out in a special resolution.
Agreed. Agreed.
Motion.
The motion, thank you. Move forward. Motion, Mrs. Shed. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Frutos. We'll take a roll call. Mr. Jensen,
Aye.
Mrs. Estrada, Ms. Shed,
Yes.
Ms. Frutos.
Aye.
And I'm also a yes. Motion passes 5-0. The first reading regarding the new job description for bond project officer in addition to the job classification to the senior management salary schedule. Anybody have any discussion on that one? Items to bring up? We're good? I don't think we need to take any action on that. That's good. And then also the Director of Information Technology classification. Anybody have any discussion or thoughts on that?
No.
We all did our homework. We're good. Okay. Then we'll go to the consent calendar unless the trustee has a question concerning a particular item and asks that it be withdrawn from the consent calendar. All items are approved at one time by the governing board. Mr. Jensen?
Yeah, I'd like to take items E and E and F, if they could be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion.
So should we approve the consent calendar first and then go into discussion of each item or? Okay, we'll go move it down. Perfect. Mrs. Estrada, do you have anything to remove?
No, I don't.
Shed?
have.
Nothing for me.
I have nothing either. So let's first then a motion to approve those items,
A through E.
A through D. Motion to approve A through D.
Mm.
Thank you, Ms. Estrada. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Jensen, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 for the A through D. I guess then we could talk about E.
Yeah, I had some questions and I just wanted to allow the district to essentially answer them verbally in the meeting. And so I was concerned when I saw the vast discrepancy between the three bids for the wireless area network licensing. And so if you'd like to, if you could explain why those three bids were so different.
So we went out to bid as per the federal guidelines for the E-rate program to acquire what's called wireless access point licensing. This is a soft licensing. We're not pursuing things, but we needed to continue monitoring our access points ongoing all the way through the end of 2026 school year. Yeah. And then the lowest bid came in at that price, was ordered to that vendor because they're the only ones that bid correctly. The other two vendors gave us a 3-year license SKU when we only asked for 1 year. So they were disqualified, and because they just gave us a price rating, the matrix, which is approved by USAC for who oversees the E-rate, gives us a percentage, and then we have other matrix scores that we give them based upon their work with the district, based upon the cost they provided, based upon the indirect or the covered cost and the non-covered cost going through. So this is a licensing software, basically, if you will, and the lowest cost was Gigacom, and we are asking the board to award Gigacom the E-rate licensing.
Have we worked with them before?
They've participated in several bids. This is the first thing they actually got awarded a bid.
Okay.
So the first two are a 3-year bid. That's why the cost is high. And then Gigacom is a 1-year deal.
That is correct.
Any other discussion on that? You're good? So I guess, do you want to go over both or individually? Individual, okay. Do we have a motion to approve item E?
I'll motion to approve it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jensen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Shen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, so E passes with 5-0. And then how about the approval of change award to Gilbert Early Learning? Is it a similar conversation?
Yes, so I had a question concerning why we needed the additional fire rating on the doors. I believe this is the doors and the windows, or just the doors?
I'll let you know.
Please.
Okay, so this is for a change order from Queen City Glass for what we call storefront. It's the aluminum and glass framing on here. So when we have a fire rating wall that allows for a 4-hour rating across the district, 4 feet from that wall, the aluminum rating must be at 45 minutes. For the coating, the aluminum, and the tempered glass must last for 45 minutes. This is a DSA requirement. Unfortunately, Orange County Fire Authority got involved in some of this, and DSA got involved, and this little thing missed the DSA certification back checks. Consequently, when we went out to bid with what we call a completion of the back check drawing, which is not the fully certified drawing, districts tend to do this because we need to get bids in because the groundwork is the hardest part. And so when we went through the process, that was an overlooked item. Queen City caught that, asked for a request because they know what they're required to do. We responded, yeah, we all missed it. We have 2 government agencies plus us, and we just missed that little header. So the change order is actually for 5,700 something right now.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
minimal.
it's a very minimum change
Yeah.
order. So the reason why is because we had built in allowances knowing that we might have to include those costs in case something happened for the back checks. It's usually very rare, but this is one of those instances that happened.
Yeah, I realized how minimal the dollar amount, the percentage was fairly high, but the dollar amount was rather low. I was just, from where I come from, it seems surprising that the building needs that high of a fire rating. I assume it's just standard DSA requirements.
It's because the fire authority wanted to put sprinklers in the system. DSA doesn't care we have sprinklers or not. We pushed back because it would cost the district way more. It would add like another $500,000 scope to the job. We can't. So we went ahead and pursued and got approval for putting in more fire hydrants, right? And the Orange County Fire Authority approved that process, and then we went through it. But then we just overlooked that little feature.
Okay, so there won't be any sprinkler system inside the building.
Most of our schools do not have sprinkler systems. I think our performing arts building and our No, Forever Arts Building is the only one that has sprinkler systems.
I'd just like to add to that, it could have been something that was probably overlooked. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's dollars, it's what matters. I think it's the human beings in that building that matter the most, and the safety of everybody around there that matters. So slight change order and that coming in, to me, doesn't make a difference. As long as we secure the human beings within the facility, inside or outside. So upgrading the door to standards, for me, is a non-negotiable. It should be done regardless.
Yeah, we have to meet the requirements, and so I, very much appreciate that. I just want to make sure I understand why the cost increase and what was behind it. I thank you for a wonderful explanation. It's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? If not, do I have a motion to approve that item F?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Furdos.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 for item F. Information correspondence, major topics. It seems like we have that list already. So Superintendent's Cup, dual language immersion presentation, and LCAT video review. Awesome. Looking forward to those. Please don't make us get up and walk around or do any drills.
We will be.
No. I think we want the kids to do it. We're okay. We enjoy watching.
I have a doctor's note, so can't do it.
You're excused? Yeah,
Excused.
I'm his caretaker, so I'm excused too. Is there anything else, Dr. Lee, you'd like to add to that?
No.
Thank you. Is there any board member request for any information or for future topics?
Actually, I do. It was brought up to my attention by a parent about reclassification. As far as students feeling or families feeling left out after being recertified after the initial ceremony. So I wanted to see if there's a way that we can reanalyze how those students that get reclassified after the initial ceremony be incorporated in some type of recognition. Because I think that's what some of the parents are missing out on. And it's important to them. That's the reason being they brought that up to my attention. But I just want to see if we can do some type of analysis or a study session or whatever however we want to look at it to see how we can incorporate them before the end of the school year is over, so they can be acknowledged for their classification.
Just to clarify, are you looking for input on how we can include families of students that have already reclassified in the past? There's a monitoring period that happens thereafter, but are you talking about more like events or?
More so just after, because I know there's early on in the school year, there's one group that gets reclassified, but then as the year goes on, other students can get reclassified. So once those the additional group of students get looked at for reclassification, if there's a way we can take a look or get input on how we can eventually, have them be recognized before the end of the school year is over.
Okay, and then we can update you on the weekly communique. Would that be sufficient?
That works.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Excuse my poor memory. In the Friday report, which was excellent as usual, there was some great data presented about student achievement and broken down a little bit more by subgroup. It would be great if that was presented at a board meeting for every, the community to be able to look at and see. So at some point, if there is time, that would be, I think, a good presentation.
And it is a part of our data presentation annually, so we'll make sure that data is included. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just one last thing for me. I was approached by Lena White from she is an administrator of North. She does have it's called Social Chats podcast. She did invite me to be a part of it. The reason why I bring it up is because I don't know at what capacity I'm being invited at, but if I'm being invited as a board member in leadership, I just want the board to be aware that I will only speak on to the best of my ability, not for everybody, but just for the questions that are being asked of me for that podcast.
I think you'll
Sounds
do
fun.
well. You'll do well representing us. Or yourself. Either or. You'll do great.
I just wanted to put it out there
Yeah,
because
thank
you
you.
just
Thank
never
you for
know.
sharing that.
I think it's more or less as a board member, but I just wanted everybody to be aware and also the public that is something that is coming up.
When's that occurring?
Sorry,
When is that occurring?
I'm scheduling a date as we speak.
Okay,
So once we schedule a date, then I will let everybody know.
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anybody else? Awesome. All right, we'll be going into closed session, conference with Dr. Lee, Julian Lee, Superintendent Buena Park School District, and Sandra Potteet, Chief Financial Officer, regarding labor relations for all associations and public employee discipline, dismissal, release, performance evaluation about the superintendent, et cetera, et cetera. Covering board, oh, do I have a motion to go to closed session? A motion, Mr. Estrada, a first motion by Mr. Frutos, second by Ms. Estrada. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passed 5-0. Going closed session at 6:30. Thank you, everybody. All right, do we have a motion to reconvene?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Britos. I'll take Mr. Jensen second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Board meeting reconvene at 8:30. Nothing to report out of closed session. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
So
I'll
second.
take, whoa, 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 whoa. I'll take Mr. Frutos first, second by Ms. Shed. Oh, Ms. Estrada, Ms. Estrada. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Board meeting adjourned at 8:31. Everyone here.